Part one, we are going to be building color palettes from photographs. So this is a technique that is frequently used by designers trying to match a color palette to an image or to use an image or place as the inspiration for a color palette. And this can often be done to reference a certain place, style, ethnicity, culture, etc. So getting started, what are some of the first steps we're going to do here? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by collecting some images. I'm going to show you guys where you can find some of those here shortly. And we want to make sure that you are following these 10 colors that you see here. So they're listed out. We have red, pink, orange, yellow, blue, green, purple, one neutral color, which could either be a beige, a gray, or a taupe, and then white and black. Okay, so those are 10 different colors for the 10 different compositions that you're going to be working on in part one. That's very important. So be sure that the majority of the images that we're collecting here are that color. So for example, the first color, red here, when we're going through and we're looking for an image, I want the image that you choose to predominantly be red. It doesn't mean that it can't have other colors in it. I don't expect you to find an image that is only red with no colors in it, but I want the dominant color within that image to be red. So a good way to kind of think about that in your head is about 80% of that image should be that red color, okay? And we'll look at some references here. But as you move on into the additional colors, you'll want to think about it the same way. Pink, orange, yellow, blue. When you're looking for your blue image, you want to make sure that the image that you choose is predominantly blue, roughly 80% or so blue. It doesn't mean there can't be other colors, but I want it to be very obvious what color you're referencing based off of that image. So be sure the majority of the image is this color. For example, you might find an image of a lush green jungle for the color green. And we can use some stock photo sites such as Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay to find these images. We're going to go through that here in a second. You're then going to place these 10 images that you find into the InDesign template provided to you. And you're going to pull colors from the image to build a unique palette. Make sure that your palette does not have colors that are too similar, as you are striving to create a palette with 5 unique colors. That's important. I don't want to see just a blue image with 5 different blues right next to it. That's not the goal here. We're trying to create a diverse color palette based off of each one of these photos, okay? This may be challenging at first, but you'll be surprised at how many colors are contained within these images. Also be careful that you use the correct template depending on if you have a horizontal or vertical image. After you have made all the 10 compositions, digitally pick your favorite color out of all of the compositions, and you're going to label that RGB and CMYK, and then that's what you're going to use for part 2 of this assignment as well. The deliverables will be all as one PDF. We'll be working in InDesign. It'll have 10 pages. So once you save that out as a PDF, it should have your 10 digital compositions in 10 different pages, which you will title appropriately as your first initial last name, color part 1 PDF, and submit that to the part 1 section of the color assignment. All right. And I have some previous examples down here, which you can take a look at. This will download for me. Try downloading it. Sometimes those files are kind of big. Okay, so here's an example for part 1, okay? So you can see here that they are going through, exploring different images, pulling from different colors. And honestly, I think things like this are a little bit more powerful, where you're getting more of a diverse color palette inside here based off of those images. And then this is what we're going to be working on for part 2, which we'll dive in here, but I'll kind of show you guys a little bit of what we're looking at, which essentially is going to be choosing one color from part 1 that you then name yourself and do a little bit more research on to dive into the associated meanings behind that color. So we'll jump into part 2 here shortly. That's going to be pulled based off of part 1, which is this one here, which you'll be finding images and pulling that unique color palette from. So let's do this. Let me minimize that. Let's take a look at this in the template here. Are there any questions on that right now before we jump into the template? Okay, let's download this template and take a look at this real quick. So the first part, we're gonna be working in InDesign. So I'm gonna go ahead and download this InDesign template here. And if I click on that, it's gonna go ahead and open this up for me in InDesign, move this over. And I'm actually going to come up here to Window, Workspace, and I'm going to reset my Essentials workspace. I think, yeah, that's good. So this is what you guys should all be looking at here as well when you open up this template. So let's just take a quick look at this template and then we'll look at how we can use this. You'll notice that this template has 2 pages on it, right? The first page has what we refer to as a portrait style image, which means it's vertical. And the next one has a landscape style image, which means it's horizontal, right? So you can kind of think about like portrait, classic Mona Lisa, it's going to be kind of vertical. Landscape is going to be your classic sort of landscape painting, which is going to be more horizontal, right? Capture more of that landscape essentially. So depending on the image that you download, you're going to use one of these 2 pages for your template. So if you have an image that is portrait, you'll want to use this page here. If you have an image that is landscape for your particular color, you'll want to use this page here. So it doesn't matter to me whether it's portrait or landscape, but I do want you to be using the correct template for that, all right? You'll also notice that next to each one of these are 5 different boxes. Right now they're all black, but those boxes are going to be what you use to put in the colors that you find based off of these images and start creating that color palette itself, all right? So we know that when we first open up this and we're looking at the properties tab over here, it's going to give us all the information about the document itself, how many pages we have, so on and so forth. If we click over into the pages tab, you'll notice that I do have my 2 pages here, my page 1, which again has my portrait, my page 2, which has my landscape. So you're actually going to go through and duplicate these pages depending on which format you have to create all 10 of these compositions. At the end of this assignment, you should have 10 pages within this specific file that relate to the different colors that are called out here in the assignment sheet. Okay, so again, red, pink, orange, yellow, blue, green, purple, neutral, white, and black. So you might want to go ahead and take a note of that or have that open as you work on it. And let's go ahead and start taking a look at how we can download some of these images and putting them in the template. So I went ahead and mentioned right here that you can use stock photo sites such as Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay. And if you go back to the home page, actually, I believe they're in here. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Sorry guys, I know they're in here somewhere, but I can't remember exactly where they are now. The links for those specific websites. Well, that's okay. I'll find that. I believe they're in the first module here somewhere. Course resources, maybe. There we go. So in that first module under the course resources, I have direct links to all of these websites here. You can just type these in, of course, if you'd rather do that. But basically, these 3 websites are websites that you can download high resolution images from that are for non-commercial purposes and that you can use, or for commercial and non-commercial purposes, you can download and use for your work copyright free. So beyond just this classroom, you can use these sites to download images for any and all of your work. So any of these would work. They're all very similar. Let's take a look at the first one here, Unsplash. So essentially, when you click into this, it will bring you to this third-party site here, and you can start exploring whatever it is that you wanted to explore. If you wanted to type in a specific color here, you could. It might bring up some images that are related to that specific color. Let's just type in red. And this might get you started. Now, again, what I would suggest is choosing images that are about 80% that color, but do maybe have other colors inside of them that you could potentially reference. Okay, so for example, this one right here I think is pretty good. It's predominantly red, right? Say it's 80 to 90% red. I think there's no doubt that if you look at this image, you're going to assume that this is the color red that I was referencing. So if we like this photo, we can go ahead and download this. Again, you can download this for free. You don't need to set up any sort of account or anything. I'm gonna go ahead and just click the download free button, and it should go ahead and download that. I went ahead and downloaded it to my downloads page. Now, it does give you the option here to give a shout out to the individual who took this. If you were working on some sort of bigger design and you wanted to put that in there, you could, but you do not have to. These are all copyright free, so you do not need to include that. Now, one thing that's kind of weird, not weird, but it's fine, but this photo is actually a square format. So in this particular case, you could use either one of those options that I provided you. But let's look at a couple other options here and download one more. So I'm gonna go, let's go with the same. Actually, let's go with the color green here for our next one, because we do know that we're gonna need to find a green one as well. But instead of just typing in green, I'm gonna type in forest, because I feel like I could definitely get something green out of some images of a forest, but instead of just typing in that specific color, let's see if there's something that kind of jumps out to me a little bit more here. And this is just, you know, very subjective. You can go through and see what images you like. It doesn't even need to be, you know, something like a forest. If you wanted to go into something just that you were exploring, you could explore something, you know, that might be of interest to you, or come up with some sort of theme or something like that potentially. If you wanted to group all your images around. I've had students do that in the past as well. Very subjective here. I won't spend forever looking for one. I was just trying to find something that might be nice with a little diverse color palette. Let's just go with this one here. So I'm going to use this for my green, and again, I'll go ahead and download here. And if you said, you know what, I'll have that as my backup for the green, but you know, you wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit further, that's fine too. You can always come up here and just go to explore, and you can potentially just explore some images that might work well, that you might be surprised at how you would find something, right? For example, this one here might work for something like your neutral color palette, for your silvers or grays, something like that. So I encourage you just to poke around here a little bit, see something that might work for your particular color. In fact, you know, this one's kind of cool here. This could potentially even work for my greens too. Something like this. Whoops, that's taking me into iStock. I have to be mindful of that. So anyways, I won't stick forever. Actually, let's do this one for that green. I like this one a little bit better. Get some more diverse color in there. All right, so I got 3 images downloaded here. I have one for my red, and I actually have 2 for my greens that I can use, okay? Of course, you can go through and download as many as you want. Refer back to the actual assignment sheet, and you can use any of those websites that I showed you there as well. Refer back to that actual assignment sheet there for what colors you're going to need to use. Sorry, I know I'm floating around here, guys. Back to our color module, assignment sheet. Okay, and now let's jump over to our template. So let's start with my green, because I know that that one was a specific format here. So again, this was my portrait format, right? It's that vertical image. So I want to make sure that I choose the correct template for that. So I'm going to come back over here to my template, and I'm going to use this first page here that has this style template to it, not the landscape one, but the portrait style one, so that it works for that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select into this placeholder box here, which is going to be where I'm going to place my image. And I'm going to come up here to File, Place, and I want to locate where I've downloaded that image. You might want to create a folder for your images that you download, whatever you're comfortable with. I downloaded mine to my actual downloads. So once I found that, I'm going to go ahead and just hit open, and it's going to place that inside there. Now, what it did is it placed it inside there, but that image is pretty large, right? So we're really not able to see that whole image, and that's not helpful for us. So once we place it inside there, we want to fit that image inside this box that we've already determined the size for. And the best way to do that is to right click on this. And you'll notice that if you scroll down, there's a fitting option. And there's different options within here, actually. Let's see, fill frame proportionally. So I think what we want to do here, let me make sure, no, is go to fill frame proportionally. Sorry, I just had to double check. Different options are going to do different things. In this case, if we go to the fill frame proportionately, what it's going to do is it's going to take into consideration the size of this frame that I have, which I want to stay the same for all of these. And it's going to fit that image within that frame the best that it possibly can. Now, what you might notice here is there's a little bit of image up at the top and the bottom, because my actual box here is a little bit smaller than that image is, but that's okay. I don't need to see every little tiny bit of that image. I want this box to stay the same, but I do want to see as much of that image as I possibly can. So again, by going to fitting, fill frame proportionately, it's going to fill that whole frame that I have specified and keep the proportions of that image the way that I want. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? Excellent. All right, this is the fun part. So now we have this in here. I can tell that, again, everything still looks good, right? My image is lining up with all my boxes. I don't want to be moving stuff around. I don't want to be resizing this. The template should stay the same, but I do have my image inside here. So now what I want to start to do is go through and change these boxes over here on the right to reference specific colors inside my image. And it's really easy to do that. We're going to use the eyedropper tool to select different colors within your image here. So I'm going to start with this top box using my arrow tool to select the very top box to add some color to. Coming over here to my tools on the left, I'm going to click on my eyedropper tool. It looks like just that, a little eyedropper. And I can essentially come around here and go ahead and click into the image, and it's going to change that box that I have selected to the color that I've just selected within the image itself. Okay, so I have that light green there, which might act as kind of like my base for that. That looks good. Let's go back to my selection tool, select on my next box, go to my eyedropper tool, and this time maybe I want to find a little darker green for that, right? Something like that there. Now, if I come down here, I could go in and maybe pick a different green, although I think what I'd like to do here is maybe pick some browns or some light, these mushroom color kind of deals that are coming off of here. So maybe if I click into that mushroom a little bit, I might get that kind of soft neutral brown that I'm looking for. And you'll notice that as I clicked onto that, it changed that color, right? But now if I go to click on it again, it's not letting me pick another color necessarily. So once you've clicked it once, in order to reset that, you'll either need to go back to the eyedropper tool, or if you hold the Option or Alt key on your keyboard with that box selected, you can go through and just keep selecting different parts of the image to get that right sort of value or color that you might be looking for. So if you wanted to get a little darker brown, you could potentially go for something like that, right? Or if you wanted to get more of a neutral brown, you could do something like that. So by holding that Alt or Option key, it's going to allow you to move around that photo and select different colors with that eyedropper tool and keep changing that color in the box until you're satisfied. So now I'll move down to my next one here. Maybe this one I want to be a little darker brown. I'm getting some very light values up here. So maybe this time we go with something a little bit darker. Here, let's go with my option, maybe like a dark wood color, if you will. Something like that. Very subjective, guys. It's not, you know, there's no right or wrong to this necessarily. We're just going in and experimenting with the variation in color here. And actually, I think I'll pull from maybe another green in here since this is my green reference. Okay. So looking at this here, this isn't bad. I think this is a great start. I am noticing that these two are a little bit close to one another. So maybe I want to go back to this original one that I did and just pick a little lighter yellow, lighter green potentially, if I can find one here. Maybe even something off of one of these highlighted leaves there. Yeah, something like that could work. Okay. So this would be one of my 10 compositions that fulfills my color green here off of my list. So now I'd want to go back to my list, figure out what other colors I need to do, and continue that process throughout the rest of this template here. We'll do one more with the red color, but does anybody have any questions on this right now? Okay. So again, creating diversity here, right? I don't want to see just all greens necessarily, even though that is the color we're referencing. Pull some of those other colors from inside there. Try to create a diverse color palette. You really want to think about this as you are trying to create a color palette that you would be able to use for a design. So if there's not enough contrast in these colors, your design is going to look washed out. It's all going to look the same color. It's going to have no contrast and hierarchy. The more you can achieve through that contrast, the better off you're going to be with your design. So let's move on to the next one here. And I'm working with the color red. And if you remember, for my color red image that I chose, I think it was this one. Yeah, this was a square format. So in this case, I could use my landscape one if I wanted to, and go ahead and click that, go to File and Place, drop that, or I could also use my portrait one. It really doesn't matter because that image is square, but usually if your image is going to be horizontal or vertical, you'll want to choose the appropriate format. For this particular case, let's go ahead and use this one up here again, just so I can show you guys how to duplicate these, okay? So once I have both of these filled out, you're gonna wanna duplicate these templates to get all 10 of your pages, and it's pretty easy to do so. You're just gonna come over into your Pages tab, and you're gonna want to right-click on the page, whether it's vertical or horizontal, and go to Duplicate Spread, okay? So now you'll notice that I have my original one up here. I still have my landscape one, which I would use for any landscape photos that I have. And because the other one that I'm going to be using down here is portrait again, I duplicated that spread, and now I'm going to go ahead and rework this. All right. So at the end of that, you're going to duplicate enough pages to get all 10 of those for that assignment. Okay, so let's drop in our new photo. I'm going to click over here on the left, and I'm going to do the same process. File, Place. This time I'll go to where the other image that I had was, this one here. Open. And you'll notice that now the image is not fitting within the whole frame here, right? And that's not what I want. I want that image to take up the entire frame. So again, going to the fitting option, right-clicking, fitting, fill frame proportionally will allow me to fill that whole frame up. And if you needed to, you can always use your direct selection tool to move that image within the frame if you wanted to, potentially. Like if you wanted to get a little bit of blue over here from this sort of fire hydrant thing, you could do that. It's up to you how you're positioning that within the frame. Just make sure that it's filling that frame entirely. Okay. All right, so we got our new image placed here. Make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to quickly go through here and grab some colors. So what I like to do, again, since this one is red, this is our red image, 80% red, although there are other colors in here. I like to go ahead and start with that kind of main color that I'm working with. So maybe grabbing one of my main reds here. And if I'm not in love with that first red, I can hit that Option or Alt key to go through and maybe just click through here in some of these to find one that I like. Kind of like that one there. I think that's looking good. It's kind of a reddish orange. And then I'm going to go ahead and select on my next one. I'm going to go ahead and find a darker red here. So I'm still kind of falling within that red color palette, but this time I'm just going for a darker variation of that. Let's go with something like that there, okay? Now, let's mix it up here a little bit. I have some really nice neutral tones inside here as well. I have this kind of interesting blue that's coming from the windows over here. I have this sort of yellow that's coming from the door over here, which fits really nicely in that space. Maybe I'll leave that yellow, come back over and grab this blue over here, or potentially even the blue from my fire hydrant space over here, if you think that creates a stronger contrast. Any of those are working. And then my last one, could pull from something like that, or if you wanted to, again, maybe go off of something that was a little more neutral, maybe one of those strong highlights inside the door, or maybe even one of the strong highlights off of the red up there would work well. Let's go with something like that. Very diverse. I have some nice contrast. I have some nice value changes here. I mean, you could think, even between these two monochromatic colors of these reds, you could place these within a design and have some nice contrast, right? That dark could become the background and the lighter red could become the text or the image on there to create that focal point. That blue inside here would be a nice sort of complementary color to interject into the space. And then these sort of neutral tones are kind of helping to support some of those louder reds there as well. So this is sort of the idea to go through here. As you can see, again, we've completed 2 of these compositions, our red and our green. You'll want to refer back to the assignment sheet for the complete list of colors that you work on. And once you're completed with that, you'll go ahead and save this out as your InDesign file, and then also save this out as your PDF, or export, I should say, as your PDF to then submit to the assignment section.